That then takes us on to 5.7, which is the land north east of Auchendirry. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the erection of 395 dwellings, formation of access roads, car parking, landscaping and associated works on land north-east of Auchendirry. The proposed development consists of 395 dwellings comprising 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed properties. This includes a 25% affordable housing provision, the formation of one primary vehicle access within the north-western corner of the site connecting to the Bray. It includes the improvement to the Forth Road and the corresponding footpath to allow for a creation of a second vehicle access to only part of the site. The provision of a network of internal roads, footpaths and cyclepaths, the protection and enhancement of woodland areas, the provision of open space, landscaping and sustainable urban drainage system, and the safeguard of 1.5 hectares of land originally envisaged to be a site for a primary school. The application is a modification to the 395-unit residential development which was approved by the committee at its meeting in November 2020. The proposed amended scheme follows the general design, layout and principles of the previously approved scheme. The site is allocated for housing and is located within the built-up area of Auchendirry, where there is a presumption in favour of appropriate residential development. The site was allocated for housing in the 2017 Midlothian Local Development Plan and contributes towards the Council's housing land supply. No material considerations have been presented to outweigh this presumption in favour of development. The site is well laid out, has a mix of house types and has good provision of open space and landscaping. There have been 164 representations received in relation to the application and 11 consultation responses as outlined in sections 5 and 6 of the report. The recommendation is to grant plan permission subject to conditions and the applicant enters into a planning obligation to secure developer contributions towards necessary infrastructure and the provision of affordable housing. Thank you, Chair.
Before I open it up to the rest of the questions, just one question I want to ask. And I know this is the third time this will have come to the committee. The last twice it's gone through committee, but I just want to ask the question again because there's been a lot of commentary on road access and widths of road, etc. So I just want to nail it down, just so it's done properly and done publicly. Thanks.
Yeah, Chair, in terms of the application itself, it's for 395 units in total. The northern access, which is the primary access which goes on to the Bray, accesses the majority of the site. That accesses 345 of the units. 50 of the units are accessed from Firth Road, which will require improvement and upgrade, which means widening and putting on a footpath. The applicant has secured land to do that so that it meets the required standards that we can expect in the council. The other additional thing to bear in mind is that there is currently a 30-mile speed zone through part of Auchendirry. That would be extended to cover the entrance off the Bray into the site as well.
Okay, right, thanks. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, at the risk of repeating myself, because this has been through committee a few times, but I'm going to ask very similar questions, Peter, so you might be prepared. I just wanted to draw your attention to 8.83 and 8.85 in the report. So 8.83 talks about the safeguarding land for education, and in 8.84 it says the Council has decided not to pursue this option in reference to a single-stream primary school. In 8.85, however, it says the future use of the school site should a school not be required. ... So my question is, those two paragraphs are contradictory. Is there a school needed there or not? And it doesn't seem like a particularly good solution to just say we might need a school, we might not, and if we don't, why don't we just build a garden on it? Because that's essentially what that says. So I've got some particular questions about that. The second question, Councillor Imrie has picked up some of them, but it's more around the active travel aspects that have been picked up by the objections, and you will no doubt be aware, I'm sure everybody will be aware, that Auchendirry isn't served by a bus service at the moment, and it's an entirely unacceptable situation to then be throwing up almost 300 or 260 odd houses to a place that hasn't got a bus service. And I completely appreciate that sometimes there is a chicken and egg situation whereby people come, the buses come. But I would like to see that as part of any planning conditions, that there is meaningful conversations, consultations done with any particular bus companies. It's not, particularly the job of Midlothian buses to do that. There is other companies available. And likewise, I don't think it's the responsibility or the onus 100% on the council either. Developers, do have advantages of covenants building, and they should play their part in that. In fact, I would go as far as to say that if needed, both in terms of public transport or indeed paths and other means of active travel, that developer contributions should be considered should the application go ahead. But I still have some very serious reservations about this application, as I did before, and so I would hope that you would be able to alleviate those by answering some of those questions, Peter. Thank you.
Just before you answer, Peter, just on the second one, I'm not even going to touch the school, because that's we could be here for about an hour or two arguing and going into little corners and having a break-up. But seriously, on the transportation thing, I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with the position that we need to get these communities served by public transport. And if we're serious about active travel, then that should be it. So within the Green Transport Plan, can it be ring-fenced for a contribution to making sure whatever bus company it happens to be runs a bus through Auchendirry, and to get that done as soon as possible? And it may be a precondition of the houses being built. It may be that we need to get that bus service in place anyway, so that in actual fact, as people move in, there's a bus service there, so it becomes second nature for them. So I don't have the words, I don't have the techie stuff. I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from. I know we do have that as part of the developer contribution, but it's just to nail that down for the buses, as opposed to, or for public transport, as opposed to just a green transport plan. So if that could be picked up, fine. You can pick up the school, and I'll put my crash helmet on here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In terms of the school issue, there's two paragraphs which seem like they're contradictory, and I understand that. What the situation is in terms of the local plan, it was identified as a housing site with a primary school in it. That was the local plan position, hence this safeguard of piece of ground. When the council determined and granted planning permission for the previous scheme, same number of units, 395, part of the legal agreement tied in the council, if it wanted the land for a school, it gave the council a year to make that decision and decide. The council didn't take up that option, didn't draw down the option to take the land for the site. So that's the reason the first paragraph is saying that the council has not drawn down that piece of ground, because it hasn't. The second paragraph is us as a planning authority saying, well, we've still got a bit of uncertainty here in terms of what the ambition is about the site. So the ground is still sitting there vacant if the council want to use it for that. So that's why you've got that sort of contradictory position. But until the council corporately advises the planning service what it definitely wants to do in terms of that piece of ground, we're in this slightly limbo situation. And to be fair to the developer at the moment, they're saying, well, it's still there if you want to use it. So that's the position with the school. In terms of the active travel public transport, I suppose to pick up the point in terms of one of the recommendations about developer contributions is to take contributions towards road infrastructure, but also public transport. And the ambition was to speak to the bus companies, but not just one, to see what the options are. The main routes at the moment obviously run along Pennycook Road, Edinburgh Road, the A701, which is it's about a 10-minute walk from this site, but I appreciate for those with maybe restricted mobility, that's still some distance. So it's about having a conversation to see whether some of those services can be redirected down through into Auchendirry. My understanding is that happened previously, but there wasn't a take-up or a use of those services, so those services stopped. But with this scale of development come into Auchendinny, that will hopefully make a difference. So it's very much a plan to take that away, have that contributions. If that requires some sort of subsidy for a fixed period of time to get the passenger numbers up, then that's what we're looking at, Chair. At this moment, though, I can't guarantee you or give you that guarantee that a bus service would take up that option at the moment.
Thanks for that. Councillor Parry, I'll bring you back in again.
Yeah, it was just a brief point of clarity, or a kind of supplementary, if you like. Peter, thanks for clarifying that that is indeed a contradiction in the paper. What would be further helpful, and perhaps, and I'll come in later and sum up as to where I am, but I do think that that paragraph 8.84 in the paper does need to be amended regardless of what happens, because what it says there is the council has decided not to pursue this option. At no point have councillors gathered themselves in this chamber and decided not to pursue that option. Like you say yourself, not drawing down on the land is very different than councillors or elected members or any officials coming together to make an active decision not to pursue a primary school on that land. So I'll leave it for that just now. I know that other people have got other questions, but I would appreciate if that could be amended.
Thanks for that. Yeah, there's no governance whatsoever. Yeah. Councillor Cassidy and then Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just as a little side note here, I'm looking at the numbers, 297 as opposed to 98 affordable houses. I'm on the right page, am I? Yeah. A group of us went up to Dundee last week to have a look at these modular houses that have been built in Dundee, apartments, two-bedroom apartments, and they're absolutely stunning. I'd move into one myself tomorrow because the view over the Tay, it's just beautiful. But the make of the buildings is quality. They're built in Wishaw, they come in a lorry, they're put on. They've built this site in less than a year, and they've had difficulties because of ingress of water, because it's reclaimed land, and they've had their difficulties with that. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking two-bedroom cottage flats and two-bedroom houses, I'm presuming, these could be doubled in size if we worked with the model that's been worked in Dundee. And they're at the forefront now. And I'm wondering, do we have the power as a council, as a planning authority, to speak to the builders and say, look, could we have a look at something different here? Because we're not making very big headway. We've got over 4,000 people in the waiting list, I think, in Midlothian. We're not making big headway into getting people into houses, and I think we should be looking at this model as a council, you know, following Dundee's example, to get people roofs over people's heads and get them into decent housing. So there's a question in there somewhere, if you could.
Yeah, I think in terms of looking at affordable housing, there's obviously the affordable housing that comes on the back of private developments like this, and also the council's own house building programme. It might be best to first look at that just as a first principle to see if the council can take that approach. I don't know which officers accompanied members on that trip, and I don't know whether that's been sort of followed up as a thing to look into, but it certainly sounds worth looking into. If you try and parachute that into a scheme like this now, suddenly you're increasing the unit numbers on the site, and that's got other ramifications and complications. So I don't know whether retrofitting it into a scheme like this is the best approach, or actually starting with a brand new council site as a sample, shall we say, and then rolling it out that way. But it sounds like something that we should be looking at, and I don't mind going forward just talking to house builders in general about different approaches to house building.
Councillor Cassidy.
Yes, I wasn't advocating retrofit. I'm just saying that as a way going forward with this council, this is a fantastic opportunity to be at the forefront of an innovative building project in Scotland, you know, and helping out our constituents and getting people into houses that are, you can heat them with a candle virtually. They're so well insulated, you know, and they've got good ventilation so you don't get damp. So I think that this is something we should seriously be looking at as a council.
Yeah, Peter will take that away as an action point, but not really actually anything to do with this particular application. Right. Thanks for that. Councillor Alexander.
Yes, with reference to what Councillor Parry and to what Councillor Cassidy was saying, we need, as a council, to look at the climate emergency and what we have decided is a climate emergency and how we are going to address that. So I think that every new development, and this is quite a substantial development, should have at least one bus running through it. Otherwise, we're never going to get rid of our reliance on the car. So I would fully advocate that that is part of a condition, that we have a bus running through Auchendinny and indeed all other developments that take place in future. And with regard to what Councillor Cassidy was saying, I think we really need to look at how we build houses in Midlothian, and is there something that we should be doing as a council, or is there something we should be putting forward to the Scottish Government and Westminster Government as to how how our houses are built, using the contemporary conditions that we have just now. We're producing lots of CO2 in their build and in their future use. So I think that we really need to look at these conditions going forward.
Thanks very much for that. It's something that's dear to all of our hearts. Councillor Virgo, and then Councillor Smale, then Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Chair. It's maybe, in fairness, a slightly flippant thought, but if the school isn't going to be built there, bearing in mind some of the discussions that took place in Council last week, maybe it's an ideal site for an all-weather pitch.
Excuse me, Councillor Virgo, no cats out of the bag at the moment, please. Councillor Smale.
Yes, I mean, the points raised by Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Alexander are very interesting. I think they belong really in the Housing Committee and another debate. I do know that Edinburgh have had a sort of modular little village for some time now, 5 years, and I know that Fiona Clandillan has also been looking at what we might achieve in the manner you discussed. But I think before the House at the moment is a development that's very well advanced. And the point about bus transport absolutely is a desideratum and always has been for this council. But as Peter has pointed out, there is a bus route not so very far away. So I think if we were to impose this condition at this late stage, our chances, if it was appealed to the reporter, would not be very good. I wonder, Peter, if you could comment on that.
Chair, I think it's about how... I guess it comes right down to how precise we are about what we're asking for. At the moment, the papers are saying, take a developer contribution towards public transport, speak to the bus companies to see if we can redivert from that existing route. So that's what's recommended. But because we don't control the bus companies, there's no certainty about whether they will actually do it. What we can do is offer and subsidise for a short period of time. So that's what... So if you're saying that it shouldn't be approved unless there's a condition placed on that it can only be delivered if a bus route comes down through it, then yeah, I would suggest that there's a vulnerability at appeal on that basis, because the site isn't allocated for housing, there's a previous approval, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Smale, I think we're all being pragmatic about the thing. What we're doing is we're putting it on the agenda here in this committee, which is the place to do it. And what we're all saying is we want to see public transport going into this and on the back of these houses. And, you know, I'd like to see it as soon as you get a Section 75 signed off, get that money, get with the bus companies and get a bus starting to run through there, so that as the houses come on stream, we've actually got a bus service coming through there. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier to get what Councillor Alexander's saying is people onto buses, as opposed to retrofitting the bus after all the houses have been up for a couple of years. So we're not actually making a condition in terms of it's either or.
I take that position, but I think Councillor Alexander was suggesting that would be a firm condition, that there would be no houses built until there was a bus service. I don't think we're in a position, sadly, to deliver that because of the process that we've been going through.
That's Councillor Scott.
Thank you. I was just going to bring up the point about the school. So the anticipated rise in primary school pupils for this is 111 pupils, and they would go to Roslyn and Morriswood. And just for information, because it's very pertinent to the capital projects and priorities, the 23-24, Roslyn has a total of 289 children and a capacity of 267, and Morriswood has a total of 372 with a capacity of 392. It's just to really point out how crucial and how important decisions will be in the not too distant future because of when we put through these project applications.
Thanks for that. And of course, you've got the caveat to that is they're all anticipated numbers as opposed to actual numbers. Plus, as somebody reminded me last week, children actually leave school as well.
Thanks, Chair. That's true. Peter, I wonder if I could just ask you a point on 3.3, which is the house types. So I think about 65% of those houses would be 4 bedrooms, then 3 bedrooms, then 5 bedrooms. So did the developers give you any indication of why they feel that those numbers are appropriate? Why is that the right split?
Yeah, it's 99% of the time it's just market driven. That's what the market's asking for. Yeah.
If I can ask a supplemental then, in terms of the affordable housing, they're all 2 bedrooms and we've got 18 3 bedrooms. So the affordable housing would indicate to be way much smaller. So are we saying that affordable housing just need less space, smaller houses, less children? Particularly given the pressures which you'll be aware of for larger 4 and 5 bedroom houses, of which the council have very few.
Yeah, in terms of this site, and it's a general principle on other development sites, is that the affordable housing make-up is done in liaison with the council's housing services, looking at the local need, demand, waiting lists. So the reflection of affordable on housing sites isn't done without that sort of relationship with the council to see what need needs to be met.
I'd be interested to see that, actually. We'll maybe take that offline. My understanding as housing convener is we do have a desperate need for 4-bedroom houses.
Yeah, the assessment was very localised, so I'm not disputing that it depends on where that need for 4-bedroom houses is, whether that's the local need in that area or elsewhere.
Well, I'd be a lot more comfortable if we could visit that to be assured, and if necessary, those numbers will need to be changed to reflect Midlothian's needs as opposed to the developers.
Yeah, just there's 2 things here. There's the private market housing, which is market driven, and the affordable component, the 25%, which is driven by local need identified by the council, and then that's usually locked in as part of the legal agreement, based on what the council as a housing service is saying is the need. But happy to take that away, Chair.
Well, again, the housing. Oh, sorry, Mr. Oliver. Thanks for that, Derek. Right, Councillor Parry.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate people have asked a variety of questions. I am going to move against this paper for a few reasons. One is in 8.83, the paper refers to this plan being part of the MLDP for site HS20, so I have reservations about that. But the most important point is in 8.85, where it says that we don't really know what to do with land, so what we might do is landscape it. And that refers back to the point that I made around the council has decided not to pursue this option, which isn't factually correct. And by going forward with this, with 8.85 in the paper, we are essentially making an education policy by making a planning policy, and we're removing any opportunities ever from ever using that land for a primary school. And I just don't feel comfortable with making that decision, which probably has its rightful place in full council as part of this learning estate strategy, and making it on the hoof as part of a planning policy. So I think it's really unfortunate that it has ended up this way, but because of that and because of the what was in the Midlothian plan, I can't vote for that today, Chair. Thanks.
If I may, I just wonder whether it's possible to move it with an amendment and just, but yeah, because I think, like Councillor Parry, I think the fact that it says quite boldly it's not a matter for consideration. If we can just remove it or amend it to say we'll retain that land with an option of doing something that council wants with it, can we just move it with that amendment? Because I think we need to get these things moving, and if it's just for the sake of that, I wonder whether we can amend that.
If it was me, I would actually cut out 8.84 and 8.85 and just go with 8.83, which is actually the land is set aside for education, full stop. Until the council makes a decision, that is the position of the council. And, I said it the last time when this application came up, another builder, certainly, I made the point the last time that the school was part of the rationale about why there was 400 houses getting allocated in Auchendinny in the first place, or it wouldn't have even been in the local plan. So there's a bit of history here that we were pushed to put houses in or put a primary school in, and the developer agreed with that, or not actually build it, but set the land aside. So I'm quite happy to get these taken out, these paragraphs taken out, so they're not considered by the committee, and that we're still supporting granting planning permission, but with the caveat that that site is for a school, full stop. And then, if the council changes its mind, that's fine. Sorry, Councillor Smale and then Councillor
I'd just
McEwen.
like to second your proposal there, which I hope will satisfy Councillor Kelly, who has, I think, a valid reason to think the document is not as clear as it should be.
Yeah, to clarify, I'm happy with that, and if councillors are happy with that as a point of consensus. The only thing I would also add is just a caveat around what we mentioned earlier around transport, as long as that is included in our final consensual motion.
I think we can all, Councillor McEwen, I'll bring you in, and I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah, I was just concurring with what you said, Convener, and also reiterate what Councillor Smale said to second that, with the caveat that it is educational land and there is a sustainable public transport system incorporated in the planning.
Councillor Cassidy, are you quite happy to withdraw as well? Thank you for that. Right, thank you very much for that. The planning is permitted with the certain amendments and caveats that you are very aware of, Peter. So, thank you very much for that. There's no other items on the agenda, so thank you very much for your attendance and contributions, and meeting closes.